everybody, good morning. This is Jean here. Jean Truelove from Truelove Quilts for You. I'm coming to you from my makeshift temporary sewing room in our son's lovely basement area here where we're temporarily living after we've had some little bit of trouble at our house, my other sewing room. I keep going over to my other sewing room in our home, and it's still, everything is intact, everything is lovely, most of it. When I think I was explaining, when the tornado hit our home, we had put quite a few of all my machines and everything that was on the bottom of the floor, which was flooding, we had put everything up off of the floor, and then we escaped the tornado and came to safety. If you don't know if you're just tuning in, our home on September the 1st here in the Pennsylvania area was hit by a tornado, the winds and the flooding, and our home is uninhabitable at this moment. So we are in temporary digs here, and I hope you will recognize what I've done. Our son has, we're here at the gracious generosity of our son and daughter-in-law and their family, and this basement apartment has gray walls. They're minimalistic and they like their gray walls. I was like dying with gray walls. It's fine, and everybody's like, put something up, you know. So with 3 tiny little thumbtacks, I put up an old quilt. And it's interesting, I've been showing you a lot of my, the last several videos, I have old quilts that I made 10, 15 years ago. And I was thinking, I made those quilts, and they were, they're very near and dear to me. This is just a batik half square triangles that I was experimenting with years and years ago. As you can see, no rhyme or reason how I put them together. I just started making the purple, the green, and the blue half square triangles, and I stuck them together in rows, and then added, no pattern, added this sort of border here. And then this has been washed to death. It's just sort of a lap quilt, but it's been washed to death and drug all over the place, and I found it. Because I have these older quilts, I have a few of them over here also, that weren't packed away or weren't ruined in the flood, because I think they're the nearest and dearest to me. I have made hundreds and hundreds of quilts, so I've given away quite a few 100 quilts. I've sold about 200 or 300 quilts in my Etsy shop, when I had my Etsy shop, when I was selling quilts. But my old ones are just like real sweet and near to me. This one here on the back of my chair also, I was showing you one that I had the other day. This one here on the back of my chair, I'll show it another time. This is one of the first applique quilts that I ever made. It's not done real well, but I'm so thrilled with it. And I thought, I have a black chair here, I have to put something pretty on it. So this is my little sewing area that I've set up. I'm getting used to my Juki, my new Juki DX2000 QVP. It's a nice little machine. I've not read the manual, I've just sort of messed around with it, but I'm getting used to it. I will read the manual. Again, I'm a little bit distracted, and I always said, somebody said when when I was talking to people in the past, when I had my intact machine in my sewing room, and I was really doing tutorials, which I'm not doing now because I don't fancy it and I'm not up to it and I'm a bit traumatized. But I would always say, step away from the machine if you're feeling tired or aggravated or angry, or, it's not working out. This should be fun. Well, my life hasn't been fun since September the 1st, since the lockdown. It's been stressful. But I thought, well, I'm not going to be doing anything. I told you, I'm not going to be doing anything big. I'm a one-trick pony. I'm going to do something big. I'm not going to finish it here in this area. This is an awesome little sewing area. I do have my little ironing board here, which is sort of new. I have a little tiny Olicio. I have an Olicio little tiny little iron, a mini iron. Wasn't cheap, but boy, it works really quite nice. It's not like my Olicio that lifts up. The Olicio one that I have lifts up on its feet. This is an Olicio, just a little compact one, with my little compact ironing board here that I believe I got on either Wayfair or Overstock.com. As you know, one of my last videos, I was sewing my squares together that I had gotten from a quilt show, but it was, she actually owns an Etsy shop. I'll put the link below. However, I believe the woman who's going, I believe her name is Donna, who was very, very pleasant at the quilt show. I think she's going to yet another quilt show. So her Etsy shop is now on vacation temporarily. So you can't purchase these right now. She might have even sold out. I had, if you had remembered, I had purchased these lovely little 6-inch cut squares that she has salvaged beautifully. They're beautifully ironed and washed and lovely cut 6-inch squares from vintage tablecloths. If you remember, like the 40s and the 50s vintage tablecloths. One of my last videos, I was not in the mood. I thought, I'm just going to sew them together. That didn't work out well. I didn't love that. I looked and I'm like, that's really stupid, because I think they're little pieces of artwork in themselves. Look at that lovely, lovely, lovely image there. The 1950s, 1940s, 30s tablecloths, 100% cotton, but you people who are a little bit older will know exactly how these feel and how beautiful they are. So I was sewing them together and I thought, nah, that was stupid. And I thought, you know, everybody's like, oh, you can make, I believe it is, she tells you what you can do. And again, I'm repeating myself from my last video. These are 25 vintage tablecloth squares. Each bundle makes a 17 by 44 runner or a 28-inch square tablecloth. And this is how they come packaged beautifully. I had bought quite a few packages. Anne had said, treat yourself, something new, something fresh, something that you didn't, you know, is not in your old sewing room. You need something happy. So I did treat myself to quite a few. And then as I was looking, I thought, I think I'm going to put sashing in between. I'm going to address them as a little piece of artwork. But then I thought, you know, long pieces of sashing, sometimes you can get a little bit skewed and the sashing can go off. And if you remember when we were doing sashing before, the strips in between, even if it's off slightly, you'll be able to tell. So I do know, I have made this before, you can self sash a block. Now these are 6-inch squares, but if you had 5-inch charm squares, if you just had a pack of 5 or a pack of charm squares, 2 or 3 or 4 packs, you can make a decent sized quilt. I'm making a big quilt. I thought, I love this so much. And again, I'm a one-trick pony. I like my pinks, my reds, my florals. And I thought, this makes me happy right now. I'm not going to kick against the goad here. I'm enjoying putting these squares together. But what I had done is I had pink and white striped fabric. And you know I love my stripes. So what I have done is I'm going to put my camera down. And again, this is basic. I've self-sashed each block. And then you put your blocks together and it's already sashed. Your quilt is already sashed. I'm going to be making a fairly decent sized quilt for when we get home, wherever home will be, whatever home will be. I'm going to be making it for our bed. Real pretty feminine, real pretty. My husband loves pink and lovely. He's so good. And at one of our first homes we had when I married my husband, and I had moved to London because he's English, and we redid the bedroom over, and it sounds weird, but I had gotten a beautiful black and pink and white wallpaper, roses, beautiful, dramatic, just on one wall. And the other walls were painted a palish pink and then white cupboards on one whole wall. So just this focal wall with black background, pink and white, beautiful roses. And the bedding I had was, my husband had built me a beautiful headboard, which we padded in black velvet. And then the bedding was pink, like a very pale pink and white, pink and white and lace and everything, whatever. Very, very pretty and feminine. One of the chaps, an English guy, came in to see our new house, which we had redone, and came into the bedroom and looked at my husband and said, I could never live in a bedroom like this. It's so frou-frou and frilly and pink. And my dear husband, you know, happy wife, happy life. He says, actually, he said, I love it. He said, it's like waking up in a womb. whatever the heck waking up in a womb is. Like, he goes back to when he was in his womb, right? But I just thought, aw, he's a good guy. And ever since then, we've had frilly, pink, lovely, feminine, pretty, four-poster, lacy, frilly, ruffly beds and bedrooms. And my husband loves it. He loves it. So again, when we go back to our home, this is going to be a fresh start. That's what I'm saying. So what I have done is I've already made and put together one row of these self-sashed blocks. But I'm going to put my camera down and just show you how very quickly, this is just one row of my tablecloth squares put together. And so the first row, they have a vertical and a horizontal sashing. I got quite a few of these. It's going to be a big quilt. I am not going to quilt this myself. I'm going to put it together. I'm going to make the quilt top, and then eventually, when we have the money, I will send it out to be quilted by my guy in Missouri, my Quilting by David guy, because it's not going to be inexpensive. But again, as I said, we're treating ourselves. Ian said, make something real pretty that makes you happy, darling. So what I have done is, here are my squares that I have made that I'm going to be putting together. And I'm going to put my camera down. I will show you how I actually cut. Again, this is like basic quilting 101. You experienced quilters, you've done this, you can do this in your sleep. But this is just how I find it much easier to do, even if you're going to do even a small quilt, let alone a large quilt. Get the sashing and then get it right. Now I'll show you how I actually make the blocks. Again, you can use charm squares, 5-inch squares. These are 6-inch squares, and how I put the sashing on two sides, and then you put them together and you're done with your sashing. So I'm going to put my camera down and I'll show you my next step. So I'm here at my little makeshift cutting table here. I have my an older mat that I have, and I just have a few rulers that I've grabbed from home. And of course, I have my Fiskars ruler. You know, guys, I love my Fiskars rotary cutter ruler combination. Okay, now what I'm doing is I had gotten a couple yards, or I have had a couple of yards of this pink and white stripe, and again I'll have addressed this. I'm a one-trick pony. I like my pink and white and my red and white, but what I'm doing is I'm just slicing off 1.5-inch strips. And as you know, I do like my, let me put this over here a little bit. I do like my 2 ruler method. Okay, I have a small little ruler here with my 1.5. I'm going to be making 1.5-inch strips. What I do is, when I need to make quite a few strips, I put the fabric ends together. As you can see, I'm cutting I'm cutting 8 pieces of fabric here. I know that my ruler can do that. I'm putting the 2 cut edges of my yardage together. Okay, so I would have had 2 layers of fabric, but then I'm actually folding it in half again, so I have the four double layers of fabric here. Okay, I've neatened up this edge with my ruler, and now I'm just going to be cutting 1.5-inch strips. I line my ruler up on my edge here, on my fabric, and as this is a stripe, it makes it easy to make sure that my strikes don't go wonky or anything, because my ruler is nice and straight on my striped fabric here. And again, I've neatened up that edge. I'm going to find my 1.5-inch marker right there, and I'm going to butt that right up against my rotary cutter ruler combination here. I'm going to line that right up there and go right up the top and right down the bottom there. And then this ruler here is, you press down, the rotary cutter blade is underneath right where you're going to cut. Okay, you press down. Now, since this is 8 pieces of fabric, I'm going to press down firmly. I'm going to hold my ruler, I'm going to press down firmly, and there I have cut 2 whole lots of width of fabric strips immediately. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to put my fabric, my ruler right over here. I'm just going to shush my rotary ruler over. I'm going to make sure that the 1.5 is up there, 1.5 inches down there. I'm going to pull it back on itself. I'm going to push this down with my palm of my hand firmly, making sure everything's lined up. And oops, didn't quite cut. Right there, perfect, lovely, 2. So in that short a time, I have 4 width of fabrics, strips, 1.5 inch strips. Awesome. Love my rotary cutter ruler and my double ruler system there. So I have cut my sashing. You just saw me cut my sashing into my 1.5 inch strips, and that is from selvage edge to selvage edge. These little fuzzy parts and with the little dots here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut that little printed selvage edge, the fuzzy edge, off. Excuse me. And I can get 7 of these 6-inch squares on this one piece of sashing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the pretty side of my fabric sashing to the pretty side. Doesn't matter which square. This is a very mindless task. I'm just grabbing each one of these. This is the pretty side of the fabric is up, and the pretty side of my fabric, the right side, is down. So now I'm just going to put my, I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam on whichever side of your square. 1/4 inch seam is important to keep that, and about 1/2 inch with my needle down from the edge. I'm just going to slot, I'm just chain piecing here, I'm just going to slot another square, pretty side up, and I'm just going to butt that right next to that square. I'm not going to overlap it, it's not going to be a gap. I'm going to just butt it right up, just carefully, keeping the edges together. My needle, my presser foot will go down. This is a lovely little machine. It's a computerized machine. It's not like my other Juki, but and I'm not going to be going too fast. My needle is down. I'm just going to grab another one and just butt it right up. Just take your time doing this. And that way, as you know, I don't love it when patterns say cut 62 pieces of sashing, 6 1/4, blah, blah, blah. I'm not into that. So this is how I can do this. Oh, look, almost like the pattern matches up. This is how I can do this. And it ends up pretty precise, let me tell you. Again, about 1/2 inch. And I'm just grabbing willy-nilly and putting it wherever. What a beautiful tablecloth piece that was. As I said, I think it's doing a lot more justice. Look at the lovely strawberries. Doing a lot more justice, treating these as little works of art with the sashing. And that's what sashing does. By all means, I could have just sewn these all together, and it would have been a beautiful collage of color and pattern, but I quite like sashing them. So now I'm just butting that right up to it, and as you can see, I'm coming to the end of my sashing strip here. It's just a little bit left over, but that inch, and then that's a bit of selvage, so that's okay. And then right off. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this over. Hopefully my camera will see what I'm doing. I'm going to turn this over with my sashing now on the bottom. Okay? And as you can see, I'm just going to put my scissors right in between. All right? Just right in between that. Put that over on my ironing board. Be very careful, keep everything straight. All I'm doing is I'm cutting that 1.5 inch of sashing. I'm just putting them over on my ironing board, ready to be ironed. As you can see, my fabric squares are just butted up to each other, so I'm just cutting the sashing. And that means I've sewn exactly the right amount size of my block. Like that, and then I'll just cut that end bit off like that. Now over to my ironing board here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this seam with my little iron, and then I'm just going to roll that over just like that. I'm just going to roll it right up to the sashing, and then I'll be back. Actually, I'm looking at this filming this, and I was saying when I first got this machine that the light is quite bright, and actually when I'm sitting here in front, the light is very adequate. However, as you know, on my other machines I have an LED strip lighting that goes, let me just see if I can move this here. My LED strip lighting goes in here. I quite like an LED strip that has a cord that goes around the back and plugs in, and it really is a game changer. I will be getting an LED strip lighting for this, especially when I'm filming. Actually, it might even be a bit glaring, a bit bright, but when I'm actually sewing, this is nice. It really is it's quite adequate. I can see this is a little bit of a darker basement, so it's not as bright as my sewing room, and so actually filming it's a little bit dark, but you get the idea. So here I have all of these blocks that I've sewn together, a chain piece together, and again what I'm going to do is I have my stripe on one side of my block, and again here is my strip that I'm just going to trim off this. Now I can't get 7 of these on a strip, I can only get 6 because we've taken it up. So what I'm going to do is, again, you don't have to use a stripe fabric. I quite like the stripe fabric. I'm going to sew on 2 sides of my block. Now every block has to be stitched exactly the same, okay? You're going to have to stitch this piece here and this piece here exactly to get your sashing properly when you put your blocks together. Now again, as you can see, I'm just butting this piece that I've sewn with the sashing right up to that other block there. And again, lining these raw edges up, pretty sides together, and sewing my 1/4 inch seam. Now, as you can see, I've already done 1 row, all right? And here's my block, okay? As I was sewing it, here's my block right there, okay? And they're all exactly the same, my blocks. They have the stripe on one side and then back down the other. So the stripe is going horizontal here and it's going vertical here. Okay, so I had sewn together, I must excuse my phone, I had sewn together about 13 of these because it's going to, again, as I said, it's going to make a nice big quilt that I'm going to send away to get quilted. And I think I figured it out, I can make about, I have about 225 of these squares. I think I need 224, and I think that's 14 rows, 14 squares across, 16 rows down. I think I figured that out. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, 13. Okay, I think I want 14 though. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add to this row here. I'm going to add a square, and I'm not going to overthink this. I'm just going to pull a square from my pile here. Oh, I'm just going to, well, actually I'm going to think a little bit. I think I want a blue at the end here. There's a pretty blue. So I'm just going to put them over there. And as you can see, I'm just going to configure my blocks exactly the same. So I have, oops, my block is here, okay? I've sashed it on one side and I've sashed it on the other. Keeping it exactly the same way, with the sashing this way and the sashing this way. I'm going to be putting the pretty side over to the pretty side, okay? You want to make sure you have the pretty side to the pretty side, and that way you're going to be sewing down one side so so it ends up self-sashed. My row, What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my row that I've already sewn, and I'm going to figure out exactly where I want or how I want my quilt, my next row to go. And as you see, it's done exactly the same way. Do you see that? Here's my first row, all done. There's the sashing this way, the sashing this way. My next row, if you can see that, is constructed exactly the same way. So I'll just put this to the side. I have these blocks in front of me, and I'm just going to be putting the pretty side to the pretty side. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and I'm going to press these seams. I'm going to set my seams and I'm going to press them all the way they want to go, which is this one wants to go that way. And then I'm going to sew my rows together. So as you see, I have my 2 rows of already sashed lovely quilt blocks put together. Now you might be saying, well, how are you going to be finishing this off when I get to it? What I'm going to do is, it's already sashed inside. What I'm going to do is I would just add a bit of sashing up there, and if I want to add, if I would want to add a border, probably not. I'll just continue sewing some strips together and sash the top and then sash the side, because that side is already sashed. Do you see that? So this is a very simple way to put squares together, which is pretty, which is like if you have pretty charm squares and you just want to highlight your charm squares. Super simple. As you can see, this sashing here is going vertically all the way down, and this is going horizontally all the way down. So I have that. They're pretty matched up. I'm just going to now put the pretty sides together like that. And this I will pin. As you know, I don't pin a lot, but because we've sewn them pretty good, and they're pretty much the same size, they might not be exact, but I can just sort of either nest or match that seam right there and this one here. So we're just going to pin this bit of vertical sashing here, and as you can see, they pretty much match up pretty well. And again, instead of messing about with long sashing pieces, we are literally just messing around with 7-inch pieces of sash. Is the beginnings of my lovely quilt from our bed whenever we get to our bedroom, with my self-sashed blocks. As you can see, the sashing is pretty darn lined up nicely. I'll take a few close-up shots of it. It's really worked out very well. I love it. I think it's so pretty. And as you can see, somebody did suggest, why don't you put sashing on your blocks? Well, after I was doing that what I was doing, sewing them together, it makes so much more sense. So if you have a beautiful charm square pack, and you don't want to, just sew the blocks together or cut them up, by all means, self-sash your blocks. Again, this is how it ends up. You just on 2 sides, and then when you're done, you'll either put the sashing on the top again, and then maybe a border to make it more rectangular if you want, however big. But right there with the sashing is a beautiful size, like a table runner, just a few blocks. So there's a lot that you can do with a couple charm packs. These are 6-inch squares, as I said. I think they're delightful, and I'm really looking forward to just working on this, you know, chipping away at it and enjoying all of the beautiful patterns. And again, from this Etsy shop, I'll put her link, but I do believe she is on vacation. But anyway, I hope you're having a lovely day. I'm sewing today. I've hung up a quilt. I'm happier to making the best out of a difficult situation that we find ourselves in. But as I always say, there's no use crying in our beer. And yeah, the sun is shining. So I hope you're all having a lovely day. And yeah, I'm sewing. Truelove quilts. Truelove is quilting for you, at least today. All right, folks, have a lovely one. Love from the Trueloves. Bye.